Well, let's talk about the world's oldest profession. I find this interesting because I have a very different view upon this than most people. But in my observations of life, I have found, and I'm a very keen observer, that religious people are some of the worst. The biggest hypocrites going. I don't care what religion they are. They are some of the biggest hypocrites going, very spiteful. And as I was completing my 3 hours of cardio today, very thankful I've never seen a doctor, which I could never figure out why a Christian could be a doctor in practicing the type of medicines they do today and kill people with pharmaceutical medicines far more than people die of drunk driving and give them $500,000 worth of chemo meds and that type of stuff. But I'm a person that believes prostitution should be very legal and safe. And, I could tell you this, that the biggest religious leaders out there have been caught many times doing exactly the opposite of what they preach. Exactly the opposite. I don't understand why people don't see this, but I could tell you the police do the exact opposite too. I can even, I'm not going to say, but I'm very familiar with a detective that more than 30 years in the state of New Jersey, he was in charge of Vice, and he was involved all with them all the time. Truth be told. And, he'd be going out there on a bus, but I don't want to get into details because, I don't know, it's too heavy for YouTube. But I have to also say something about media content, too, interject this. If people remember way back when, before there was DVDs and digital media content, it was the VHS and Beta. Sony had Beta. But Sony's Beta was far superior to VHS. It was thought they were going to really be the ones to take off because they were the first ones on the scene. But the difference was that VHS allowed a lot more content. Now, without getting specific, VHS allowed a lot more content than Beta. So, just as it seemed like who was the strongest turned out to be a dinosaur and left in the dust. But that's really how media works, because actually this human sex drive is one of the strongest drives out there, except for like food or something and water and air. So, but I don't think prostitution should be illegal. It should be, it's a healing thing. That's what I think of it. And actually Mary Magdalene, which some people thought was extremely bad, what I said, but sorry, my belief on Mary Magdalene is like she's the patron saint of prostitutes. And I think Jesus had sex with Mary Magdalene. Now, I don't know if that's a bad thing or what. I know, if you're in another religion, I don't want to mention anything, but this gets really stupid. But I'm going to just point out some stuff with religion. First off, being a Catholic, I recognize, actually I like Catholic the best, but popes have sometimes, and many of the top people, I'm just going to go through this very quickly, but educational purposes, but popes have been responsible for setting sexual agenda for almost a quarter century of the world's population for centuries, right? Very true. It was St. Paul who set up the church's strong anti-sex standards. I don't know why, but popes ever since have publicly praised the virtues of chastity and fidelity, but they don't practice what they preach in many cases. Some have been far more promiscuous than the most depraved of their heathen. Many popes in religious hierarchy have been in duplicity and scandal, including unauthorized marriage, adultery, illegitimate children, homosexuality, and pornography. And I don't want to just get on with Christians, or it goes on with all of them. The Protestants, the preachers, the Saudi family, the Iranians, the Russians, including with their Orthodox. It's all over the place. I'm going to get through some of this real quickly, because I think it's kind of not really worthwhile to go through too much, other than to point out there's a lot of hypocrisy in religion. A lot. Many popes were concerned with the celibacy of their priests and forbade marriage for priests. However, they used to sell them licenses for keeping mistresses. Do as I say, don't do as I do. Usually they were prepared to tolerate priests who kept incestuous relationships with female relatives or raped women in the church. When a woman fainted during a confession, the priest seized the opportunity to rape her. The Inquisition found that this technically was not a case of soliciting. The Pope's only concern was that priests would defile the sacrament when handling it afterwards. So these are what I view as religious fundamentalists. They're mean people. They're evil. I think they're really evil in a true sense. Now, I put this out before about Putin. A lot of people love Putin, but I think it's true. Moscow police have discovered a brothel on the premises of the monastery whose abbot is thought to be President Vladimir Putin's spiritual advisor. Now, it depends on, the abbot of the monastery said it to be a religious counselor to Mr. Putin, who's confirmed Russian Orthodox believer. Now, I know Mr. Putin, President Putin, has a mistress, and had a baby by his mistress. So, I mean, and she's like, old enough to be his granddaughter, things like that. I mean, that's proven. But, actually it goes on to say that they found, like a priest that got in an accident, and he had a BMW Z4 Roadster with Maltese license plates, a priest, in other words, who was practicing poverty and chastity. So what is he doing with that? Or somebody else wearing a 20,000... I don't know, was that lira, pound, whatever it is, watch? I forgot what that symbol was. But anyway, and then you go to Tehran. Tehran, police chief, caught with 6 prostitutes. See, he was the police chief Reza Zarel, who was in charge of moralizing the city, was forced to step down after being caught in the nude in the local brothel with 6 prostitutes. This is typical. So, I think Jesus was 100 times more, the real Jesus was 100 times more open-minded than the religious zealots that came after him and interpreted his words. That's my belief. Now, no matter what you say about religion, somebody doesn't like it. I know that. But religion and politics is actually freedom of speech, too. Now, I'm not against Jesus, but say I was. Say I thought he was a total fraud or something, and I said that. Is that wrong? No, that's my belief. But I think that Jesus was very tolerant of sinners in a lot of ways. He worked with sinners, and I don't think prostitutes are necessarily sinners. It's a combination of healing and sex. That's what I think it is. If it's strictly for plastic sex, I think it's a sin, but I consider it different. I consider it almost like another type of therapy. That's what I look at it as. And actually, if it was so evil, it wouldn't be tolerated at all. But quite obviously, all the politicians, like generals and all this type of stuff, seem to have no problem with prostitutes. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, anybody that lived to be more than 12 years old can figure this out pretty much, or maybe it's more than 12 or 22 or whatever the hell it is. They all figure it out. They figure it out at all the highest echelons in society, whether it be religious, politics, law enforcement, or whatever. Yeah, I know, like, for instance, a lot of Vice Squad, they're involved with that. Police are involved with that. It's a big hypocrisy. But they have to do something to show. And usually, I find that we're really the meanest people around are the religious. So, that's my view on it. I think prostitution should be 110% legal in the United States, but it should be very carefully done and away from drugs. I'm totally against drugs, except for like some of the weed or something like that. That I am totally against drugs. That is something where the prostitutes get totally victimized. I'm not against prostitution, but I am against victimization. So that is exactly my opinion. So I don't know. If it's too hot for YouTube, I'm not sure. I guess I don't know. I mean, I can go on another venue or something, but that's just how I think about it. But I also very acutely aware of what happened with Beta and VHS. So I don't know. I notice on YouTube though, there's a lot of more controversial things. So I think it's just a matter of some people getting all bent out of shape, because in certain circles, like if I was in Iran and I put this article out about Tehran police chief, I'd be stoned to death. By who? The religious hierarchy that visits the brothels. But I guess if you're in America, well, there's actually fundamentalists in Christianity are very extreme too. And as I pointed out, many of them don't practice what they preach. but their restrictive behavior is actually extremely unhealthy, in my opinion. So, but that's just my opinion. So I'm not allowed to have an opinion. Wrong. I can have an opinion, but maybe the VHS format, as I'm saying, the alternative format is the better place for that, and that is where the droves in the audience will seek the truth will go. I don't know.